I got interested in neuroscience many years ago when I first learned about the idea that when you learn something that your brain actually changes. So the idea is that when you learn something out there in the world, the connections between the cells in your brain, which are called synapses, actually change their shape and their number. And so what I wanted to really understand when I went to school and when I started my own lab was trying to understand how that process works. So what I got interested in studying then was this process called gene transcription. And so genes are the things that make us what we are. They're the instructions that allow us to make the parts of our bodies. And when you turn those genes into proteins, that's the process of transcription. And that process can be regulated by things in the world around us. So this is a way in which something that you learn from looking at something when you're a child, a baby looking at its mother, can cause alterations in what's expressed in the brain in order to cause changes in how cells connect to each other. And so that's the process that I wind up studying. It's something called plasticity, the way the brain changes in response to the world around it. And in particular, synaptic plasticity is plasticity of these changes. And we study the way in which different kinds of transcriptional processes are involved in regulating that response to the world. Brain plasticity is the process by which something in the outside world changes the way in which your brain works. And one of the signals that could be a stimulus to change your brain is in fact exposure of drugs to abuse. Now, lots of people get exposed to drugs of abuse at different points in time in their life, but not everybody becomes addicted to those drugs. And the process of first taking a drug and then becoming addicted requires a change in the way that the brain is structured, such that it functions differently than it did before. And one of the things that we're very interested in studying is why different individuals are differently susceptible to that process. So presumably there's differences in the way in which brain plasticity works in their brains, which have caused them to become addicted or not. So my lab studies a process that's important for brain plasticity, and we're interested in something that's called epigenetics. And the word epigenetics means something that's layered on top of the genome. So the genome is your DNA, which is in every cell, and it's the book of life. It's what tells your body how to make the proteins that make up your body. But when you have these modifications layered on top of that sequence, they can change the way in which that sequence is expressed. So this is something that can be modulated by the environment. So if you have one kind of exposure, it can change this on top of your genes. And it's a way, for instance, that identical twins can be very different depending on what kinds of exposures they might have. They have the same genome, but something about how that genome has changed over their lives can alter the way that they are. So we're interested in studying that process. And we study it by studying a protein called MECP2, for methyl complex protein 2. What's important about studying a protein is that it means that experimentally you can address the functions of this protein, and it helps you understand how a complex process like epigenetics can regulate brain plasticity, because you can make manipulations of that protein and see what effect it has on the genome or what effect it has on brain plasticity and behavioral responses to drugs of abuse. And in that way we can try to understand more about the way in which brain plasticity mediates these behaviors.